to introduce our presenter, Michelle Heid. Michelle is a board-certified behavior analyst and is the clinical director of Advanced Behavioral Pathways. Michelle has presented to a variety of audiences, including parents, educators, and other professionals on topics including parent education, ABA, legislation, and of course, behavior management. She provides behavioral services to students of all ages and skill levels in the Santa Clarita, Antelope, and San Fernando valleys through advanced behavioral pathways and strives to meet the unique needs of the disability community. Michelle, thank you for being here, and please take it away.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to Family Focus for making this possible. It's been really fun to join in every week for the last 4 weeks. So if you haven't joined yet, as Victoria mentioned, the recordings are available so you can go back and watch. And I may do some referencing of past weeks. So if you have seen some of that, or you may want to go back and watch a specific week to catch up on some of the topics that we share if something sounds interesting. Each one stands alone, so you don't have to watch them in succession. You can watch the one that seems the most interesting to you, and then finish the whole series. I know you'll be all excited to watch the whole series. Today we're going to talk about the power of rewards. And as Victoria mentioned, we provide services in home and in schools and in group homes to people of all ages. But primarily my experience has been working in schools. And what we've tried to do with the webinar series is really take a lot of the strategies that we use in schools really often that we feel like would be helpful at home or can be kind of translated to how we use them at home. And we've tried to share that advice and those strategies, as we know that many parents are now at home and you're working and you're parenting and doing, the work of a team. Most of the kids that I support have a team of professionals who support them in school. And now parents are being asked to do the Herculean task of being that entire team for their kids. So I really hope that this is helpful. And then hopefully, parents are learning a lot right now and can continue to use that knowledge throughout the rest of their parenting experience. So, keep in mind that while some of this might be really necessary now that we're doing schooling for our kids at home, it may be really helpful in a continued way to keep these things in mind. And then a lot of the things and strategies that we share, while we're focusing on how to use them and support kids and families at home, they really work and support people of all ages. So you can even use some of these strategies to help yourself manage behavior. And I'm finding right now in a time, where things are so different and we're home all the time, that I'm needing a lot more of those self-management strategies to help myself. So hopefully these will help you too. So we're going to talk about the power of rewards and really focus on rewarding the positive and how that can really make a big difference. And, there's a lot of teachers that do this really well in schools, and hopefully we can help parents do this too. So to start us off, rewarding positive behavior it's a very, very powerful. We can really use this to and shape behavior over time. And what we know from research is that behavior that is that is working for the person engaging in this behavior, for the most part, we're talking about behavior of our children. If that behavior is rewarded, it is going to increase over time. So, the really important takeaway from today is that we really need to remember and take the time and take the energy to reward that behavior that we want to see so that it will increase over time. So those rewards really encourage children to repeat those same behaviors. So if they gain a reward or some type of reinforcer for that behavior, then they are likely to repeat that same behavior. Now, we use the term reward in this discussion today, but it is very similar to saying that you're giving a reinforcer or you're using reinforcement to increase that positive behavior. So we're going to use the term reward, but it's kind of interchangeable here. We just again feel like we need to use language that everyone understands, and everyone understands that reward. So children really learn to demonstrate those behaviors that are rewarded. So over time, they learn what behavior is expected and learn what behavior is not expected through parental praise and reward over time. So if that behavior is working, then they're likely to continue to repeat that behavior. So, a lot of times when we're talking about rewarding positive behavior, rewarding any behavior, a lot of feedback we get from professionals, when we're working in schools, teachers will often say this, or when we're working in homes, parents will say this. They'll say, well, I don't want to bribe my child to do, the things that they should do. But I can assure you that rewarding is not bribing, and here's why. A reward is given following a positive behavior. So your child asks nicely for something and you give them some reward. Bribes, on the other hand, are often given in advance of the behavior. I will give you this $10,000 if you agree to do XYZ. And bribes are often offered under duress. So you're experiencing some type of stress and you're offering, this bribe for someone to do something. And a bribe might entail you offering your child something that you really had no intention of giving before you were under that state of, stress. So we often also talk about how bribes are usually used to coerce someone to do something that is illegal or immoral. And we're using rewards to reward positive, appropriate behavior that you would like to see continue. So rewarding is not the same as bribing. And I can assure you that many of us, even those of us who really, really love our jobs, would not continue to do them if it weren't for the reward that we're given every 2 weeks or every week or every month following our job. We're all paid to do our jobs. And I'm not saying we should reward our children with money, although sometimes that can be really effective. And we'll talk about that. But rewarding positive behavior it's a part of human behavior. And it does work to help children increase their behavior. And we talk about lots of different types of rewards that we can give so that you can really learn how to vary those rewards and how they might work to increase positive behavior. So hopefully we're going to get over that hump and you'll understand why we feel that rewarding is a really powerful tool and very different than bribery. So those rewards, they teach kids those expected behaviors. So when they engage in a behavior and they get that praise or that reward, then they learn that that behavior is expected in that environment, under that set of circumstances, that that's an expected behavior. And they learn through those rewards and through some punishment. And we don't recommend providing punishment to your child. However, punishment is a natural part of the world. We learn to walk upright because if we fall, it hurts. So that hurt is a punishment that we learn very early on to ensure that we walk upright and don't fall. So punishment is a part of the natural world, and we learn through those rewards and that punishment that we experience naturally throughout life. And we're encouraging you to reward that really positive behavior so that you can increase it. And we don't typically recommend any type of physical punishment, although we are going to talk a little bit about that as we continue on through the slideshow. So the more that we can reward positive behavior, the quicker that children learn what behavior is expected and then can continue to engage and display those expected behaviors. So it's really important that we try to do this often so that children have a multiple learning opportunities. If we just do it a couple times, then they had maybe 2 learning opportunities to learn that expected behavior. But if we provide multiple opportunities throughout each day, throughout each week, then they really can quickly learn what behavior is expected and start to continue to exhibit that behavior. So punishment works in the moment to reduce challenging behavior. So, we do a verbal reprimand to our child, and that behavior may quickly, in the moment, decrease or stop. However, what we know is that it doesn't have necessarily a long-lasting effect on behavior. So that's why we feel rewarding the positive is just a better way to go overall. It's not to say that some punishment isn't necessary at some times, but punishment may be a reprimand to stop your child from running in the street, or it may be, telling them not to touch something that's hot, or ignoring a challenging behavior. All could be seen as punishment-based strategies that we might use. But again, we don't ever recommend using physical punishment. So we know that research suggests that rewarding that positive behavior has a more long-lasting effect on behavior, and that's why we advocate for using so many reward-based strategies. Punishment often also only works when the punisher is present. So, the best example of this is that, you might speed down the freeway until you see that police car, and then you slow down. You only really, adjust your behavior when the punishing agent is present. So if one parent is more punishing than another, then you might adjust your behavior in the presence of that parent, but not all the time. So it's just something to kind of keep in mind when you're, using these strategies. So as I stated, and I keep stating over and over, physical punishment is never recommended. But when we're talking about punishment, it can include just ignoring a challenging behavior or not providing what they want if they're engaging in a challenging behavior. So those are punishment-based strategies aimed at reducing a challenging behavior. And so while we have to balance some of the behavior reduction strategies like punishment with more reward, we favor many more rewarding interactions. And there's a lot of reasons. The most important one is that research supports that if we use more reward and more reinforcement over time, behavior will be strengthened and we'll have better outcomes. But the other one is just that as a parent myself, um, if I'm providing a lot of punishment type interactions, my day is not going to be very happy, and neither is my child's day. It's going to be negative interactions, negative parenting, and it's not going to be really rewarding for either one of us. But if I balance that with a lot of rewarding interactions, then it's more likely that my parenting day is going to feel much better for me and for my child. And then through rewards and through those rewarding interactions, we can develop rapport with our child so that when we do have to ignore a behavior or provide a verbal reprimand, they're more likely to listen because that's not what we're doing all day long. A great example of this is my son. I have parents who are divorced, so he has 2 grandparents, 2 grandpas, and one is very rewarding and takes the time to really engage with him and create a lot of really great positive interactions. And then one is much more stern and guiding in a way that is not always really pleasant. And now that my son is much older, he's 19, he's much more likely to listen to the one that has built that rapport over time than the one who has provided less nurturing interactions, because some of those interactions have been somewhat punishing over time. So, again, it's just important that you really try to build rapport with your child, and you do that through those like positive, rewarding interactions. So, enough said. I think we all get the idea. So, as we mentioned, behavior that's rewarded will increase. So often, what we see in schools is a student will be engaging in work completion or just having really positive student behavior. That might be sitting at their desk quietly and nicely, and that behavior may not be acknowledged because the teacher has 25 students and they're all doing what they're supposed to, and so we don't see that behavior being acknowledged. But then the student screams or does something that they're not supposed to, and that behavior often will get the attention because it's disruptive to the learning environment. And so we see this at home too, that your child might be engaging in positive behavior like independent play or playing nicely with their siblings. And it's like we don't want to interrupt because we're really busy or because we don't want to kind of stop the flow of that interaction. But I would encourage you not to ignore behavior that you want to see continue. If your child is engaging in a behavior that you think to yourself, oh, that's really great. I'd like to see that behavior continue. That's the time to acknowledge it and provide some reward or praise for that behavior so that it will be more likely that they will continue that behavior. Behavior that is ignored may not continue. So if there's, not a payoff, or we're not attending to that positive behavior, then they may not continue to engage in that behavior, especially with children, because they're still learning, that some of that, what we would say like intrinsic reward that you get from engaging in some of those behaviors. And so we have to sometimes provide those external rewards to then build that in them. So when you see behavior that you want to continue, stop and acknowledge it. So here are some of the types of rewards that you can use, and you can add to this list probably many more that you have thought of or that you've used in your time with your children. If you have some of those, put them in the chat and other people can benefit from your ideas. But of course, the easiest one to use is just simple praise. And what we would encourage you to is just to be specific. Tell them exactly what they're doing, that they're earning that praise for. My son was sitting and reading a book yesterday, and I just said, I like how you're spending some of your time reading a book, because he has been spending a lot of his time on electronics. Telling them exactly what they're doing. Positive gestures. So, some students in schools really love high fives and they really love fist bumps. And I've got one student who really loves to get a nice thumbs up. And that's really great because you can provide those things from afar. I can be across a classroom or across your living room and give your child a smile, a thumbs up, and you can do those things from afar to just acknowledge that behavior. And parental attention, it can be a very, very powerful reinforcer. And I would actually say for children really of any age. For some children, it's much more powerful when they're younger and it fades as they get a little bit older. But I think positive parental attention is still really important and can be a very powerful reward for children of any age. So, you can use that by just giving your child special time, even a minute or two. A really great strategy is sometimes to provide them with a lot of attention or support or engagement before you ask them to do something. They might be more likely to comply with a request if they've had a few minutes of your attention. Special activities. So these can be activities that you just reserve for, those special, times when they've engaged in a behavior that you really want to see continue. And that can be different for every family. That might be reading a special book or watching a special movie or making dinner together or roasting marshmallows on the fire. So we did last night. So, it could be any special activity that you kind of reserve for when your child engages in some really positive behavior. Those can be really good to reward big milestones like toilet training or, finishing a big project or something like that, those special activities. Toys can also be used. And I would encourage parents, we don't want to fill our homes with like 50,000 toys. But if you're going to buy your child something, you can, like, say you're going to buy them a set of Matchbox cars. Well, you can give them out one at a time. You can give them, pieces at a time until they kind of build a whole set, so that you can use those as rewards instead of just giving, all at once. And then something that I put last on the list is food or food treats, because we tend to try to not use these. Although for some students that we work with, we really have to start with food and then pair them with other things until we can build up some other types of reinforcers. So for some kids, it can be really difficult to find things to reward them with. So we may need to start with those food rewards. And somebody mentioned that they use a lot at school, possibly referring to the food rewards, and we do use them often. However, I think sometimes they're a little overused. I think we need to start there and then fade and introduce other rewards if at all possible. So you pair those with praise and other reinforcers, so that those other reinforcers can kind of take over, and you can use those instead by slowly fading the food. So through that pairing, you can create other strong reinforcers. So if you are seeing a lot of food rewards used, or if you're feeling like you're using a lot of them, really start pairing them with other things, and then try to fade those food rewards, because we don't want to continue to rely on food rewards for a long period of time. So here's some tips for when you're giving those rewards: is your tone should match your language. So I had a client, or had a classroom that I was working in, and they had a whole token system that everyone was working on, the same token system. And the staff that would give the tokens would just say, "Here you go, here you go." And it was very boring. There was, no, the tone didn't match the reward that they were getting. It was kind of just slapped on their desk, and that was it. And I actually tried to teach the staff, okay, we need to, like, tell them good job and what they did well, and give them that token and make it a very pleasant interaction. And that staff actually just could not do that. And so we had to assign the task of giving out the tokens to somebody completely different. So, try to make your tone and your language match when you're giving that praise and that acknowledgement. Be specific. So, I mentioned, I like the way you're reading a book, or you played nicely with your brother, or you asked nicely for that toy, or whatever that is. There's a lot of ways to say good job, and you can research and get a list of how to say good job. But I try to use, that specific of what I really like that they're doing, so that they know and they can copy that exact behavior again. You might want to tell them exactly what they're working for. So we talked about this in previous weeks with activity schedules and first thens and things like that. But you can always tell them, first we're going to do this, and then we're going to have the special activity. Or you can tell them, what they're kind of working for, so that they can have that motivation to continue to persevere through something difficult. The reward should also match the size of the behavior. So playing nicely might be praise and a high five. I like the way you're playing with your sister. Here's a high five. But playing nicely doesn't equal a trip to Disneyland. So we have to make sure that the reward matches the behavior that we're rewarding. And if you want to do something like Disneyland, then maybe we work, up to that, and we have a token system where we earn it over time through a variety of lots of smaller behaviors. But we wouldn't want to, yeah, nobody's going to Disneyland right now, I know, but it was a good example. We'll say playing nicely doesn't equal a new car. How's that? Doesn't equal that either. So other giving rewards, it's really important to provide them immediately if that's possible. So the more immediate to the behavior, the closer to the behavior, the better, the stronger that's going to be. However, I always say, if you've been gone for work for a few hours and you come home and your child did something that's really great, don't withhold the praise because you think to yourself, well, it's 2 hours after the behavior. No, because we can pair it with verbal behavior, and we can say, oh, I'm so glad you emptied the dishwasher while I was gone, they will understand and make that connection. But sometimes with younger children, especially, or ones that won't understand the words that go along with it, those delayed rewards could reinforce a different challenging behavior because they reinforce the behavior that occurred right before the reward is given. So if we're having a younger child or a child who has some language delays, we might want to make sure that those rewards are really close to the behavior that we're rewarding, so they really understand and can make that connection. And then it's really important to remember that not all rewards are created equal. So what's rewarding for one child may not be rewarding for another. So the best example of this is that I hate lemon cake. So if you offered me lemon cake for doing this webinar, I would not want to do the webinar because I don't like lemon cake. But if you offer me chocolate cake to do the webinar, I would be happy to do the webinar because I really like chocolate cake. So you have to find things that are rewarding for your child. And this can be a bit trickier when your children get a bit older, because sometimes that parental praise is actually not something that's really reinforcing, but other things might be, like time alone, or parents leaving them alone, or more independence can be really rewarding. So you really have to choose items that are rewarding for your child, individualized for each child, and really watch and look at their interests, and then watch and look at the effect on the behavior. So my favorite example of this is, my son, when he was younger, he didn't really like to read. And if I saw him reading a book, if I said, oh, gee, that's so great that you're reading. I love that you're reading a book. He probably would have slammed the book closed and never read it again because I acknowledged it. How dare I speak to him? But if I bring him, a lemonade and a cookie while he's reading, he's more likely to continue reading because that is in fact rewarding and reinforcing for him. So you also have to watch the effect on the behavior that your praise or your rewards are having, to see if they are in fact actually rewarding. So know what they're interested in and give those rewards. You can also catch them being good. So this is really important. When you notice positive behavior, really stop. Take the time to acknowledge it, because that is going to pay off in the long run in increasing that positive behavior. If you just kind of walk by and you think, oh, they're doing something really great, but I'm really busy doing dishes and I don't want to stop and tell them, we're really missing an opportunity. So I would encourage you to take the time to stop and acknowledge, use a small gesture or just a bit of praise, and let them know exactly what they're doing that you want to see continue. That way we can, again, strengthen that positive behavior. And if we do this, we're going to be spending a lot less time in a really positive way than we would be attending to challenging behavior, which is not fun for anybody. So we encourage you to do these things and build up that positive behavior so you can spend less time attending to challenging behavior. Some people might like to use token charts that help break down a bigger reward into smaller parts, and it can help motivate a child during a difficult task. So the example that you see on the screen is a very cool token chart that I made. I use PowerPoint and the computer and make them super fancy with the child's interest. You don't have to do that. This is something that you can draw on a piece of paper and simply draw like happy faces in the boxes or something. I was using a drawn one that I had just thrown together in a classroom one day for a child to try to see if it's something that would help. And I asked him what he wanted me to draw in the boxes, and he wanted me to draw a birthday cake. Okay, I'm a terrible drawer, but I drew a birthday cake as best I could, and he was happy with it. So, sometimes it's just all about what you can do quickly on the fly. So you can just draw something, or people have a lot of really creative ideas of like using a puzzle, and every puzzle piece you put in is a token until you build the whole picture, things like that. This works because the tokens themselves can be rewarding, whether that's an actual physical token or, like for the child that I'm talking about, the drawing of the birthday cake was actually really reinforcing and rewarding to him. He really liked that. And luckily, he didn't always want a birthday cake. Sometimes he just wanted a happy face, or actually, sometimes he wanted an A plus, or he wanted you to write new record. So, whatever that is, for your child, that act alone can be reinforcing and can strengthen that behavior. And again, use their interests. If they're into something, if they really like Ninja Turtles, then cut out some Ninja Turtles and glue it on the piece of paper and use that. It doesn't have to be fancy on the computer, although Vicky put in the chat some of the links to some of the samples and the week one webinar where we talked a lot about this. So this is how a token chart kind of works. You have a chosen reward that goes in the one box, and then they earn the tokens and they're placed into the spaces along the bottom. Again, this can be super fancy, or it can be very simple, drawn on a piece of paper. And you can even do it with the child, and they might like doing it, and they might be motivated just simply for participating in doing that together. Here's other ones that are, you can purchase them online. They're, come in a pack and already pre-made for you. And you can do that too. Here's another cool one that I made for a student that, it's just little stars that he earns as he goes through his activity. And at the end, he earns some type of reward activity from a list that we have for him. So I always like to throw in some advanced strategies. So if you want to take these like one step further, or I'm already doing all of this and I'm doing a great job, great for you. Here's some other things you can do. You can make a list of behaviors that they're working on, or a list of behaviors that they can earn tokens for. So this is something I did with my son that was really, really helpful. So about once a week, we sat down and wrote down some of the things that he was working on that week. And these could be, behaviors of how he's talking or how he's asking for things, or self-management strategies. He was working a lot on coping skills and things like that. So you can make that list of things that they're working on, or things that they can earn token for, and then review it with them, either before a challenging activity, or just throughout the day, or maybe once a day in the morning, or even at dinner, or sometime during the day, kind of review it with them. And then by reviewing it with them, you can also review it with other family members and recruit others to provide some of that praise and reinforcement. And whether it's written down, or you just tell other members of your family who interact with your oh, hey, Johnny's working on saying, please and thank you. And then when they do that, then other people in the family can help provide some of that praise and reinforcement. And you can even, recruit your older children to help the younger ones. You can recruit grandma, to provide some of that praise and attention for some of those behaviors that you're really looking for. And I know parenting is really tough. Being a single parent, I was super lucky that I had a lot of grandparents and friends to help. But it's really important, especially right now, to recruit help from other people, so that you don't, find yourself getting burned out in the time where your children aren't in school. So I think that's really important. Some things that we can do for older kids, consider a chore chart, kind of like the one maybe that you saw in the picture before. I would just encourage everyone to keep it simple. I see some really complicated, complex chore charts, and I always wonder how long they stick with them, because they're too complex even for the parents and the kids. So just keep it simple. Simple list, check marks, and keep it simple within the chores that they actually can do. You might want to consider giving an allowance. Sometimes this can be, they can get an allowance for all of the chores that they do, or maybe just some. So some parents have like some that are an expected part of being a member of the family, and then others that are in addition to those that they can earn that allowance for. You can also do gift cards. And again, I think we have to remember that parental attention can be powerful for older kids too. And maybe it's that we go on a special walk with our child, or we go get an ice cream with our older child. And maybe we don't phrase it like, hey, let's go spend some time together, but you just kind of say, hey, do you want to go get ice cream? Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go to the car wash? And you just use, I say go to the car wash because that's something I used to take my son to go and do. And it was just a good way to spend some time together and give him some of that parental attention that would help strengthen some of those behaviors. And a lot of people use apps. And I know that there's a lot of apps that are available. I don't have a lot of information on which ones specifically, but I'm sure you can do a quick search if that's something that you want to use, where you can kind of keep track of points that they earn or rewards that they're working towards using an app that you both share. So just some ideas for some older kids. You can also do rewards that involve the whole family. So you can do things that are, using rewards that are meaningful to everyone. You can encourage other members of the family to reward with praise or kind of do that, catch them being good. Again, do things that are involve the whole family. And then something that a lot of parents do too is they might have an individual system for some of their kids, but then they might have a combined system. So I've had families that have multiple children, and when everyone's playing nicely, or when everyone helps set the table for dinner or helps clear the table, then they might put tokens or marbles into a shared family jar that the whole family is working to earn a reward. I had a family that had two brothers, and the brothers didn't get along all that well. And so we implemented a system where if they worked together, they got additional marbles. But if only one of them helped or they weren't working together, they earned some marbles. But they could always earn more if they were working together. And that really encouraged that behavior of them working together, and they really actually thought that was pretty fun. And over time, it really did work to encourage them to work better together. So what if their rewards stop working? This is something that we do get a lot from people where they say, well, I tried that and it stopped working. Yes, we may need to change rewards based on their interests. So, interests change. Kids get older, they may get even bored with a system that was once really working. So we may need to change those rewards. And sometimes you can sit down with them and ask them, what do you want to work for, to try to get them involved in creating rewards that they do want to work for. You may need to try different rewards to find the one that works. So maybe your child can't necessarily tell you what works, but try something, see what impact it has on the behavior. If the behavior is increasing, then continue using it. If the behavior is not, then you may need to find something else. And really make sure that the reward is worth the amount of work and effort that's required. Because if it's like, that's really not worth it, then I'm not likely to engage in that behavior. So you really want to make sure that the reward matches the size of the behavior. And then sometimes when we go in to consult with families or even in classrooms, the rewards take too long to earn. And they get frustrated over time because it's taking too long. They can't delay their gratification for that item for that long. And so this is where something like a token system or breaking it up might help, or just adjusting it so that it doesn't take so long to earn that. So often we'll see like, well, we're giving them a reward every week. Well, that's not soon enough. They may need something every day. So how can we break down what you were giving every week and give one every day? Some kids need one every hour, especially when we're working in schools, to keep them working and motivated, because again, we need to provide lots of opportunities to earn that reward and to give that reward to strengthen that behavior. If we're only giving it once a week, then we're only creating one opportunity a week. If we're giving it every hour, then we have many more opportunities to increase and strengthen that positive behavior. So, just some things to consider if you implement something and it's not working. Another thing that we see sometimes too is that everything's too complicated and the parents can't follow it. And the kids have a hard time understanding it. And so, if it's not working, you may just need to readjust. And I'm often adjusting things just based on kids' interests. So, if we use, a Ninja Turtle token chart this week, in a couple weeks, they may be interested in Iron Man or something else. We may need to just kind of change it. So don't be afraid to change it up based on their changing interests and kind of using what works. So that's all I have for you today. We do have time for some Q&A. And then next week, we'll be back for activities to keep kids engaged at home. So you've all been home for a long time, and you probably need some fresh ideas of how to help them stay engaged. So we're going to provide some electronic, online ideas, but also some non-electronic, old school ideas. So you can start to think about that. So thank you very much. If anybody has questions.
Thank you, Michelle. This is a great time for people to ask some questions or make some comments or maybe share some things that have worked well for you in your own life, either as a parent or maybe as a professional. As I was listening to you talk, Michelle, I was thinking about my one of my kids who's 20, and we used to do these little token boards and things, as you know. But now the rewards are really more natural. It's like he likes to cook and he likes to make new foods and stuff. So um, I'll say, well, what should we go buy at the store? What do you want to try? What do you want to eat this week? And so that's sort of a natural reward, when he's cooking things and I want to encourage that. I ask him, what can we buy that you would like to cook?
Yeah, I think, asking them what they want or what they like is, really important. Even, if like I've wanted my son to read, I love to read books and I want him to read more. I think it's a great activity, but I have to ask him, like, what do you want to read? And I can't, expect him to read the same things I do, but asking him, what he wants and what he likes, or even a lot of times in classrooms, I watch to see what kids, gravitate or what kids choose to do during their free time to get an idea of what might be rewarding for them. So I had a little guy who really liked to write in the letter book. The letter book is like, it's an assignment that they do in school that most kids would not, they don't like, but this kid loved it. And so we made it something that he would earn during his free time for completing other work. And it was, first get your math done and then you can write in your letter book. And that's what he really liked. He also liked to play with these letter tiles that we would bring out during a reward time. And he would like to, spell lots of different words with these letter tiles. Another child that I work with now prefers math. And so at times we will do math as a reward activity because that's what he prefers. So sometimes it just takes like sitting back and really watching what they gravitate to know what they might be rewarded by. And sometimes it's different than what we might think because we all have individual interests. So somebody's, saying one of your students likes watercolors. And so using that as a reward activity, I think we're naming all of these great activities that not only are just good activities to do because they're working on colors or they're working on math or they're working with letters, which is things that we want them to do anyway, but yet we know they like them. So we can use them as those, reward activities. And then I would, try to expand. If your child really likes watercolors, they might like doing the chalk on the cement, or even the chalk with water on the cement, making it really messy and fun. But it's okay if it's messy because kids are washable. So you can just
Mhm.
take them in and wash them. So if a child tantrums prior to reward, do you still give them the reward? If they did what they're supposed to do, that's a really hard question, Samantha. I think the answer is, unfortunately, it depends. It depends on, why the reason for the tantrum, um, what their understanding is, because if they are not going to understand that they're getting the reward for the positive behavior and not the tantrum behavior, then we might want to withhold the reward. And in fact, I think most often the answer would be withhold until they are engaging in more appropriate adaptive behavior. So depending on the level of the child, you might say, you earned this token, but I'm going to need you to be calm before I can give it to you, so that then they can calm down and then you can give it. I don't think I'd give a reward if a child is actively engaging in a tantrum behavior. But the other thing is, I also don't take rewards away. Some classrooms and some teachers use token systems or ticket systems. And then if a child does something that they're not supposed to do, they take some away. And that's called a response cost system. And I don't typically recommend that. I usually say if they earn it, they keep it, and we don't take it away. I think that taking it away for the students, especially the ones that I support, makes it much more difficult, and it makes a really situation where we might evoke challenging behavior by taking it away. So then they start engaging in challenging behavior. And again, sometimes I just don't think it's very fair either. If you earned it, I think you should get to keep it. There's maybe rare circumstances where I would take things away that someone already earned. I guess just imagine if you went to work all week and you did your job and you got a paycheck, and then the next day you made a mistake and they said, well, we're going to take some of that money away. Like, you wouldn't be very happy about that either. So sometimes that makes it worse. I think I'd need more information about that to know exactly what we're talking about. If you want to unmute or share more.
Yes, this is Amparo. I guess what I meant is that when they do throw a tantrum and they, earned um, throughout the day, but when you're getting rewarded, and you say right before the tantrum, and you take that away, then it really builds up to a bigger. And sometimes, and I guess, like you were saying, it depends on the child and the circumstances. That's a big thing. It's always an individual with the child.
Yeah, and I think if we can just wait out the tantrum, and then we have calm behavior, and then we can reward that calm behavior, even if it was a reward that they were, compiling throughout the day. I still think if we can make sure that we pair it at the right time with appropriate behavior, we still, can give that. But again, like you said too, I think it's a very situational.
Thank you. Very informative.
So, and Raquel is sharing that she's done with her child in the past. Here's what you earned. It'll be right here ready as soon as you feel better and you're ready to, stop engaging in that challenging behavior. So, kind of letting them know it's there and they earned it, and they can have it as soon as they calm. That might also help. Again, I think it's just really important that we pair the reward or the reinforcement with adaptive or positive behavior, that we don't give it in the moment that they're throwing the tantrum or engaging in tantrum behavior, but we kind of wait it out a little bit, I think is really important, because we don't want to pair a reward with a challenging behavior. And, we didn't talk about that today, but I think that that's, really the thing that a lot of parents inadvertently do is they reward challenging behavior, and they really shape challenging behavior over time. So your child screams at the grocery store because they want a candy bar. You know, you want to avoid a scene, so you give them the candy bar. They're more likely to scream in the future. So, you know, we can use rewards to increase positive behavior, but we can also use rewards to increase challenging behavior. And that's really important to remember and not do. A good example of that is the child says, Mom, nicely, but mom is very busy. She's got, you know, two other kids, she's doing dishes, she's, you know, answering the phone. And so you don't pay attention. Then your child says, Mom again. They say it a little bit louder. You maybe still don't pay attention. And then so they scream and they grab you, and then you pay attention. So now we've just attended to a challenging behavior because we kind of feel like, what? Okay, I'll pay attention to you. And we don't realize that we're now rewarding that challenging behavior over time. So really be careful of that, and don't shape challenging behaviors, and don't reward those, and then or they will increase over time just as easily as positive behaviors will increase over time. So, and if you want more on that, I think we talked about that last week in week 3. So more on that. Any other questions or comments? Victoria, I don't hear any additional questions or comments.
Any questions or comments either. But I really appreciate the great information and great ideas. I, I think what you said earlier is that everyone responds well um, to rewards and praise. People of all ages. You can use
Yep.
this on your whole family.
Yep, I know I respond better to rewards and praise than I do to punishment. So works for everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. And Kathleen shared my email address there. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I always say that, and not a lot of people do. So don't feel like you can't. Please let me know if you have other questions or you'd like additional resources or support in any way. I'd be happy to help.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. And don't forget, next week, June 3rd, will be our 5th in the last one in our 5-part series. And we'll be talking about activities to keep kids engaged at home. Very timely information. So we hope to see some of you again next week.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks, Kathleen.